good morning. Welcome to another episode of Papa's Workshops. These are for Adam, Brady, Luke, and Brenna, and for all those others that like seeing an old man make sawdust. But before we get started, my assistant is diligently waiting. Now, some may think that she's sound asleep, but she's not. You're just watching the door, aren't you? You're just watching the door. Let's get to work. All right, so let's get to work on the finishing up the bonnet top. We should finish this episode, I think. All right, we've got the gooseneck molding and the circles glued to the main board. That's kind of the way it's going to look on the cabinet. They still need to be trimmed. I still need to get rid of some of this here, and of course this has to be mitered on the back side. But I just took this out of the clamps. It's only been glued for about an hour, so I'll let it sit some more. I'm going to start making a pattern for the applied panels that go here and there. So we're going to probably want to clamp those on there while it's still able to be flat, rather than put the rest of the case together. So let's do that. I just taped on a piece of cardboard, poster board, just thin stuff. I'm just going to use that to trace onto the piece. And there's two layers that are applied. This first layer is 5/8 away from the gooseneck, so it has to mimic that whole thing. So I've got, and it goes right to this bottom edge. It'll hide that joint between the top of the case and this board. So it's flush with that, and then I've got it marked the 5/8 that's down the middle. So these two edges are correct. So I'm just going to take a compass and trace this outline. So just a matter of getting this all can't quite get it there. So I'll cut that edge out and trace it onto the board. And I'm going to flip it and see, but these things may not be positioned exactly the same, neither with the gooseneck. So I suspect I will have to make a second one. So I better mark this one as being the left. So we'll see how that works. All right, I did have to make a second pattern. They were off just enough. So this applied piece is just 1/4 inch thick. So I've got the two pieces cut, and see, it's going to look like one piece across there. So I'm going to cut those out on the bandsaw close to the line, and then I still have to trace them, obviously, and smooth it out. And then there's a decorative edge all the way around, a 1/4 round with a step, which would be a bead, half bead, 1/4 bead. Anyway, that's going to go all the way around, so a little bit of work there. All right, it's getting to look like something, isn't it? So I got the first layer trimmed, and then routed the profile and got them glued on. So we're ready for the second layer, and I'm going to use this piece here, and I'm going to resaw it and have a book matched, one this way and one this way. I think these lines going up, I don't know, maybe it would look better. Anyway, I'll book match them and we'll figure out the best way. But I got a little problem with my bandsaw, so should have a part here in a couple days. So So we're going to go ahead and trim these circles, work on this area up in here. All right, so last night I glued up, I took some of the cut off from the main board, the scraps from the main board, and glued them to the back. And so I'll take some of these off. You can see. So now we've got this full width now is the same thickness as our little plinth that's going to go there. So I purposely made the main board 7/8 so that together they would be the 1 3/4 I needed. So this is dried, so we'll take a flush trim bit on the table, router table, and get those all flush with the rest. And then we can start working on this little short piece here. All right, we got that flush. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but I did the same 1/8 inch step, because we'll have some small pieces fit right in there like that to go all the way up to this edge. So we got that all done. So we're ready to start on the miters. So I trimmed our circles flush, cut it with a saw, and then trimmed it with a chisel. So I went ahead and cut just the first cut on this this piece, and just on the miter saw, just because I was going to figured I was going to have to mess with it, but actually it turns out pretty good. It's a little awkward to hold it with it's got this much of it sticking out, but I think we're pretty close. So I'm going to just you know, because we had to worry if the miter on the gooseneck was, you know, we may have had to go up or down this way as well as the miter angle itself. So, but actually it all looked pretty good. So we're going to check the other one and then cut those off and do a smaller manageable piece and then fine tune it. But we are getting there. All right, we got the end pieces in. This one's drying. What I did after the fact, after this was dried somewhat, I drilled two holes down that line and pegged it. Since it's being glued to end grain, I was worried it was going to come off. So we'll plane that smooth there when that's dry. We'll do the same thing to that one. So while that's drying, I was working on we got these little beads on the top of the plinth. So we didn't want that to be end grain anywhere. So I cut a bunch of little triangles, and I'm using super glue with the activator to make the half ones, so I don't have to try to align all four at once. I let those sit for a bit, and then we'll plane that smooth, you know, any mismatch when I put it together and taken care of. And so then this is what it'll look like when it's done. So, and I drew a circle from the center line to make sure I can get all sides even. See where that one's a little, because we're gonna drill a hole. There'll be a hole in the center of this. That'll be the peg for that lower part. So we kind of want the center to be the center of the block. So little things to do. All right, I have been working on cleaning up these corners. There's, you know, the mismatch between the two profiles that were done by hand. So I had to do a little sanding to get that. I'll flip it over now and didn't do it looking at it from the top. I can't really get underneath there. Can't see that. So working on that. I'm going to glue a piece in these 1/8 inch pieces in here, and then I'll have to dress that in there. So I did an experiment. The first one, I've cut some strips So I cut some strips of 1/8 material, and I soaked one in hot water for a few minutes, and then I was able to wrap it around that tape thing. So I'm going to let that dry overnight and see how that comes out. My backup plan is to use some steam, a wallpaper steamer, and I can steam them. But these are such little pieces, I thought maybe the hot water would work. It seems to so far. We'll see what it looks like in the morning. I figured it'd be easier to glue those in and clamp them before we put all the backs, you know, all the structure pieces in. So one step closer. All right, we got it sanded from the other view, and that looks pretty good. Actually, that one there turned out real nice, especially since this is going to be setting up 8 feet off the floor. This one isn't quite as tight. Of course, the light isn't really helping it. There's a little bit of a crack there, but like I said, you're going to be looking at it from this angle. You won't be able to see that at all. So I think that's all good. So we just need to work on that part there. We got the other thing. I still need to get the bandsaw working. But we're about ready to glue it up, I think. All right, here we took that out of the clamps this morning. That actually worked pretty good. Imagine that's gonna try to straighten out over a couple of days. Just because I just soaked it, I don't know how long it's gonna really stay that way, but we don't need it to. Just long enough to get it glued in place. And it does fit pretty good. The only thing I'm going to do is rotate this around so that it's flush at the top, and then trim it right here so that the seams in the, I didn't have a piece wide enough to do the whole thing. So I'll soak 2 more pieces, one for this side and then one I cut in half that we'll use for the 2 pieces there. Then we can glue these up tomorrow. All right, I glued this piece on. I've been working on the piece of molding that has to fit in there. Of course, it would go all the way in, but it goes in there. And I had a heck of a time. My first attempt wasn't very good, and then I noticed that it's not at the same height. See, this one on the right doesn't go all the way to the center. But this was perfectly horizontal, but my 2 points weren't at the same height. So I had to come up with a way to trim those 2. And so anyway, this is my 3rd attempt, and it's pretty close, but it's not perfect. So it's a little hard to get it that way. But part of the thing is the height and the shape of this isn't exactly the same as the height and the shape of this, which makes it, makes it hard to. So what I'm going to do is glue that in after this sits for a little bit, and then I'll take the chisels and work all these places into make them kind of match as they hit each other. So yeah. All right, there where we are so far. So we've got our 1/8 piece put in, and everything seems to fit pretty good. I got this, not too bad. I still have the pieces here. Now on the original, they were just squared off for the back here. It seems to me like it ought to be all the way around, but I don't know, haven't decided yet. So we're ready to put on this next level of I don't know what you call it, applied panels. So here's the cardboard template we made for that one. So it's right there. So I outlined, it's an inch in, the next one is an inch in. So we use this same template and just marked an inch in. And I'm going to make an actual MDF template for this. And that'll be evident when we go to shape the edges. But so I've got this board, it's got some figure in it. Right here, it's a nice curly piece. So I made that cutout trying to figure out the best, but then I decided I would just take and make a negative so I can kind of line it up. So I think it looks the best right there, lining, kind of making this in line here, and then those go that way. So we're gonna resaw this, so we're gonna have a mirror image on the other side. But I mean, there's other ways of, you could do it this way, you could flip it, do it that way, all sorts of choices. But I thought this way here got the most. So I'm gonna cut that out cut this at an angle to give me a reference side, then we'll resaw this. All right, here's our two boards book matched. So that's the pattern we're gonna use. All right, we got our two pieces ready. They are just rough cut to shape, or about a little, I don't know if you can see that, just a little bit off the line. And I've got the templates made, and they're double stick taped down there. And this is why these things have a curve on them that makes it kind of like a pillow effect. It's a pretty gentle curve, so it can't just use the round over bit. So I'm going to use this bit here, but I'm only going to use this part of the curve. So, oh, if you can see that. I'm not left-handed. So, anyway, it's gonna be like that. And see, I need the bearing to ride on that template, but it'll give me a nice sweep, nice gentle curve up. So we're going to do that on the router table, but we're going to stay away from these sharp corners. We'll shape those by hand. We'll just get up within a ½ inch. That way we won't risk the thing throwing that corner out the door. All right. All right, we got them shaped on the router table. See, I stayed away from that corner, that edge. So this one I've just taken a file and got it sharp. I left the template on to support the back of that. So this one, just we need to sand that, scrape it and sand it smooth. That's kind of how it's going to look, sitting there like that. And this one there. So it's just a little bit of work. Then we can glue these down. I wanted to do that while this was still relatively flat. Then I'll put on the other molding here, and then we can glue up the top. We're getting there. All right, we got those shaped and they are glued on, these little pieces here. So that's going to just about finish that front of this thing. So I think we're ready to build up the case of this. So we got the back, so we got the frame in between. There's a close look at the profiles. So we're getting there. All right, I glued up the framework. So I put the ends in first and let that set for a bit, and made sure it was square on top of the chest. And I just put in these last two supports here. So let that dry overnight, and then we'll start on the next step. I made some feet to go on there since the molding sticks down a little bit below the frame. I got to protect that while I'm working on it, so I'm just going to screw a little temporary piece like that at both ends so I can have it on the bench and not worry about breaking that. So the things we got to do on the bench is make our little landing spot for our plinths. We got to put the molding on here. We got to plane these flush now that they're permanently in place. We get all that, then we've got an 1/8 inch covering that's got to go across this whole thing. We are getting real close. All right, we're ready to put in the support boards here in the back. Here's the original. See, we've got this. Since it's cross grain, there's a seam there to let it move. So we're just going to nail that in, maybe glue it on the outside. And then we've got 2 pieces here to go in on the sides, so we don't see that secondary wood. So we're going to put those in and then get a little closer. Well, that should do it for this episode. I'm pretty sure we're going to finish the bonnet top next time. I'd hoped to finish this time, but there's a lot of pieces on the bonnet top, and it's purely decorative. Serves no function. Anyway, I'm sorry this has been a little late. I've been under the weather, so. But I'm still waiting on the hinges for the upper doors, and I do have the locks and the latches for that. So we got all that hardware to put in after we finish the bonnet top when the hinges get here, and then of course we have the finish to apply. And I've been working on the finish a little bit on the lower cabinet. We'll show that later. So until next time, any questions, I'd be glad to answer it. Thanks for watching.